All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video will be looking at breakout defensemen for the upcoming NHL season. Before we get into the players, as always, the video presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook, the best place to be placing your current NFL bets and soon-to-be NHL bets as we roll into October here. But I have 5 breakout defensemen, 2 guys that definitely you could be drafting, and 3 guys that I would honestly monitor and kind of like a wait and see. If we go 3 for 5 on these breakouts, I'd say that's successful. All right, the first defenseman we're looking at is Jake Sanderson on the Ottawa Senators. His ADP right now is right around 135. Yahoo has him ranked as the 196th best overall player. Obviously not just defenseman. Last season, ended up playing 79 games, 10 goals, 28 assists. So just a couple points shy of 40-point season for Sanderson. He had 14 points on the power play, which we'll get into, and then 140 block shots and 160 shots. I think we'll see those numbers increase this year as well. And then 23 minutes of ice time per game. That number will definitely go up. We're going to move Jacob Chychrun, obviously gets moved to Washington. That will help with Sanderson's power play time because Chychrun was very valuable on the power play for this Sens team. So I think Sanderson will have a little bit more of a role. Right now, he has him on the first pair, or the first power play, our daily faceoff does. And then kind of looking at what can go even better for Jake Sanderson this year. In the offseason, put on some weight to be a little bit more durable. He will still continue to be, and you know, people might say this is crazy to say, but a top 5 skater in the NHL, and the metrics that you can look at on NHL.com with NHL Edge and stuff now prove that. His speed, if you just watch him skate, his edge work is fantastic. That's one of the biggest things and one of the biggest reasons why the Senators drafted him so early as well. I mentioned Chychrun as well, and I think him playing with Artem Zub and then them also bringing in a guy like Jensen, I think will help this Sens team too. Bringing a guy like Jensen helps either Chabot or Sanderson, whoever they end up playing as, that 2B or that second player on that defensive pair. Because you have Sanderson who will play with Zub, who did last year, and Sanderson obviously the more offensive guy, but when they played together, really solid and expected goals against per 60 of 2.23, which was one of the best on their team last season. They also had the highest on-ice save percentage while on the ice, so you can call that a little bit of luck last year because the goaltending overall for Ottawa was pretty bad. But this year they have Allmark. I think it can only get a little bit better, if anything. He's such an asset defensively for this Sens team. He finished with the highest goals above replacement in terms of all defensemen when you're looking at defensive metrics. So the most valuable player in terms of defense for this defensive unit. So he'll be on the ice so much, getting involved in every play, that I think there's no other option but to see his hits, his shots on goal, his block shots, points, goals all increase this year. I think this is going to be a massive year for Jake Sanderson. I bet you at some point this year he will be in the Norris conversation, or Mike could get some Norris votes. All right, the next guy we're looking at, Sam Girard on the Colorado Avalanche. Does not have an ADP listed on Yahoo right now, but is ranked 579th, so pretty far down. But a couple reasons factor into why I think this could be a bigger breakout season for Sam Girard. Last year, just 18 points, definitely a little bit disappointing. Had some off-ice issues over the last 2 seasons, but I think this year he fully comes back and is ready to produce. Even when he was playing last year, he was pretty solid. His offensive goals above replacement was 5.3, which was 3rd highest on the Avalanche amongst defensemen. So definitely his output in the offensive end is valuable to this team. I don't know, he could easily be this 50-point scorer for this Avalanche defensive unit. Devin Taves has been that guy, but there's no reason as to say why Sam Girard can't, especially now that Bowen Byram is gone. And with the lack of depth at forward, I think they're going to need all secondary scoring that they can get, apart from Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, Drouin, that top line, Cale Makar, and Taves. I think you're going to be able to rely a little bit heavier on a guy like Sam Girard than maybe Josh Manson. Obviously, this team runs with a pretty strong first power play. Second power play doesn't get a ton of chances, but he will be on that second power play ready to go when he does get his opportunity. Definitely valuable in that sense too. He'll be able to, claim that role on this Avalanche team as that small, shifty offensive defenseman with Bowen Byram gone. I think that really opens up, an opportunity here for Sam Girard to be fantasy viable. So I could see him having a 50-point season. He has yet to do that. We've seen him have NHL seasons with 10-plus power play points. I think we could see that happen again, and I'm very hopeful on this Colorado team that lacks a little bit of depth in terms of offensive skill sets, that Sam Girard can fill that need. All right, the next guy we're looking at, and a guy I already mentioned in my overall breakout video, and that's Daniil Miromanov on the Calgary Flames. Still does not have an ADP listed and is ranked 771st amongst all NHL skaters on Yahoo Fantasy Hockey's rankings. So looking at his season last year, obviously got moved over to Vegas. When he came over to Calgary, started playing top pair minutes with Mackenzie Weegar. Don't think that'll change at all this year, considering the landscape of this Calgary Flames team. There's a reason why they traded such a high asset in Noah Hanifin for Miromanov. This is a guy who used to play forward. He played winger in the QMJHL before getting transformed, I guess you could say, over to a defenseman. Played winger for Bathurst in the Q, and then Igor Larionov, said he should switch to D. Switched to D in the KHL and led his KHL team, or all defensemen, in points, and was the best offensive defenseman on that team. Has had a lot of praise, I would say, when he was playing with Henderson in Vegas. He dealt with some injuries, but this is his first full chance. And as I mentioned, we saw Miromanov play with Weegar last season on that top pair. Played against all of the other team's best players, top lines more likely than not. He said last week that he feels like he's coming into training camp, or wants to come into training camp feeling like he's on a PTO. That to me, that screams that he's hungry, he's ready to work, he's not taking anything for granted. He said that multiple times in this interview at the golf charity tournament that they had in the summer just a couple weeks ago. I think we're going to see a huge year from Miromanov. I think this is a guy that is definitely off the radar of a lot of people. I've mentioned in a couple of videos, I have not high hopes for Calgary, but I think they'll be a lot better than what people are giving them credit for right now. And Miromanov, I think, is going to be a guy who could get that 40 points this year that you either draft last in your draft or you pick up off the waiver wire. All right, another guy that I'm really high on that just re-signed with the Kings is Jordan Spence. Right now, Daily Faceoff has him listed as on the second pair with Vladislav Gavrikov. That is a very solid second pair, very offensive defensive unit as well, I would say, between those two guys. But you look at Jordan Spence's season last year even, it was hard for him to find a role in this defensive unit because, you got to remember, Brant Clark was coming up playing a little bit. They still had Matt Waugh on their team. Gavrikov was there, Mikey Anderson, Drew Doughty, and he's a guy that needs to play like offensive type minutes as a defenseman. And he was playing 14 minutes per game last year. You could see in that graphic. It ended up notching just around 25 points in 71 games played. But when he was playing his most hockey, it showed how productive he could be in the NHL. From November 8th to the 29th of last season, he played an average of 16 minutes. It was his best stretch of hockey by far. He was tied 11th amongst all defensemen in assists over that same time frame. Small sample size, but the guy creates offense. You cannot deny that. He led all Kings defensemen last season in offensive goals above replacement per 60, and he only played 14 minutes per game and a few less games than obviously some of the other guys, but still a little bit of a smaller sample size, but still really positive numbers to show that this guy could be a very solid fantasy hockey defenseman or asset if he does get the minutes. Now, as I mentioned, it was hard for him to get minutes last year. It will probably be the same thing this year. I know Raw's gone, but you still have Brant Clark, who's going to be probably taking time on that second power play, and you already have Drew Doughty on that first power play. So where Spence fits in is tough here, but I needed to mention him because I think he could still break out if he does get off to a hot start. Who knows? Maybe the tides kind of turn in LA, and he kind of takes over that role as that new and upcoming defenseman over Brant Clark. Would be tough, but if that is the case, maybe they start moving some of these other pieces that they have on the Kings to make sure both of them are getting quality minutes in the NHL because they're assets that you can't just leave on your bench. All right, and the last guy, a guy that you could take a flyer on at the end of your draft, but you probably will be able to pick him up after like week 1 or 2. But if you want to get ahead of the curve, Olen Zellweger on the Anaheim Ducks, I think he's going to have an outstanding year, a breakout season. Last year played a majority of his hockey with the Gulls in the AHL, but his stats, 44 games played, 12 goals, 25 assists, so 37 points, almost a point per game. When he came up in the NHL, the Ducks were terrible. It was hard for him to put up good numbers. 26 games, he was -6, put up 9 points, had a couple points on the power play, decent amount of block shots, but this is a guy that could create so much offense. Everyone got really excited about Pavel Minchkov's 30-point season in 70 games or 60 games, however it was last year. I think Zellweger can not double that, but he is a much better offensive, solely offensive player, I would say, than Minchkov. Obviously, two different defensemen, considering the size difference in the two. But if you do remember, Olen Zellweger was fantastic, with the World Juniors, with Canada in the World Juniors, the 2 years he did play. And now you have Cam Fowler, who is potentially going to be on the way out, it seems like, at some point this season. He's opened up his trade list a little bit more. Definitely a veteran defenseman that some cup contenders will want to have. And I think at this point, Cam Fowler knows that the next generation is moving in on this Ducks team, with Zegras is obviously still there, but you have Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier, Minchkov, Zellweger, you have Lucas Dostal, just a lot of young guys that are going to be the new kind of base for this team. And I don't know if there's really a place for Cam Fowler right now, but there definitely are on some cup contender teams, which will open up the paths for Zellweger and Minchkov. I didn't have a sole section on Minchkov, but he's definitely worth noting, a guy that I think could break out even further. Zellweger I put in this video solely because I think he can have the biggest jump from his 9 points last year. I could see him getting up to 30, 40 points this season. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of these 5 breakout defensemen. Again, again, I could do another video on these if you want some more. We'll be coming out with tons of fantasy hockey content and regular NHL content as the season kind of comes close here. Shout out to FanDuel Canada for sponsoring the video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.